Kevin, I'm an Eagles fan, but I live here and listen all the time. The way you guys are reacting to this season is so Philadelphia. Just over the top reactionary to a situation that is beyond anyone's control. You had a caller the other day that I think with a straight face said that Mariota is as good as Jayden Daniels, LOL. You had a caller last week that thought Dan Quinn was a horrible choice to be the head coach and that he needs to go. Then there was another day where a caller said Adam Peters was the problem. And even after you listed about 10 new players beyond Daniels that he brought in last year to help the team nearly go to the Super Bowl, he just ignored you and said, the drafts suck. I know that we've gotten some of these, but I think some of these have been yeah, we've gotten all of this. We've gotten the Peters, we've gotten the Quinn, we've gotten the Jayden Daniels, Marcus Mariota for sure. Anyway, John Z continues. On the drafts for you and your audience, Howie Roseman is one of the best to ever do it, but his 2019 and 2020 drafts overall were terrible, and they went to the Super Bowl in 2022. Drafts don't help you right away. They help you down the road. Remember Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson? One of the all-time first round within one pick misses. I know what he's saying. It was back-to-back picks, 22, 23, 21, 22, or whatever it was, where the Eagles took Reagor, and then the next pick, the Vikings took Justin Jefferson. Redskins fans, and then he writes parenthetically, no apologies, I still say the old name. No apologies necessary, John Z. Redskins fans need to calm down. Daniels is the real deal, and that's where it all starts. He's barely played, and you guys want everybody fired. It's extremely entertaining, but so WIP in Philly. WIP is the longtime heritage sports talk show, sports talk radio station in Philly. And by the way, for those of you that have ever been in Philly and turned on WIP, it's the best, especially seasons like this. He's 100% right. I mean, the reaction is fire everybody. Doesn't matter what they did last year. Doesn't matter what they did earlier in the season. Doesn't matter about anything. Fire everybody. It is the most reactionary sports talk radio in the country. Philly fans, their reputation, of course, precedes them. So here's what I want to do with this. Because I was on Ben's podcast last night, Ben Standig's podcast. Grant and I were on, Grant Paulson and I were on with Ben. And we were talking about, and I'm not even sure if we were talking about this when he was recording. We may have been talking about this prior to or after. And we were just talking about like the crazy reactions we've gotten this year. And what's the one that's the craziest? And I said, look, it's a choice between Peters should be fired, Quinn should be fired, or Jayden Daniels just isn't, what we thought he was. Those are the three. I don't think I'm missing one. That's pretty much the three. I mean, there's been some Terry talk, but those are the three biggies. And I'm like, look, to me, out of those three, they're all insane takes. And yeah, of course, it's reactionary. It's recency bias. It's living in the moment. It's believing you're watching something that sometimes you really aren't watching. And I'll just say this, because I think I told the guys this last night, and I think I've said this before. I think this season is absolutely impossible to evaluate. Sure, you can evaluate the kicker, and they did, and they moved on from him. I mean, maybe another move like the, Joe Witt Jr. move, just trying to make something happen in the midst of all of this misery. You can evaluate, certainly the kicking game, because there are so few plays, and the players that are out there are basically the players you thought were going to be out there for the most part. But it's almost impossible to evaluate the offense, the defense, the overall team. It just is. I mean, we can speculate on what would have happened had they stayed healthy. We can speculate on what would have happened had they just had a normal number of injuries. All of that is a matter of opinion, because one thing would have led to another, and we can't predict sort of the chain of events that would have unfolded had they stayed healthy. I mean, I would say to you right now, through 11 games, they'd be no worse than 5-6. They might be 6-5, but this is my speculation. I I think we would be in the mode of excited about a potential stretch run, and hey, let's just get into the thing because we saw what happened last year, and the tone would be completely different. But I do think that I'd be sitting here skeptical about what kind of contender they really were. And part of that would be just to look at the landscape of the NFC and notice that Philadelphia is really good and that Detroit, Green Bay, the Rams, Seattle, they're just better overall teams. Like if we were 5-6, still very much in it with, the schedule after Denver easing up a little bit until the final three. And then we'd be talking about maybe the Eagles have it clinched. They don't play for anything in week, 18, the 17th game of the season. All of that would be a big part of the conversation. But I think that's where they would be. But I want to be clear. I don't think, pure speculation, very hard to evaluate. I don't think I'd be sitting here thinking that they were as much of a contender as they were last year, at 7-2. And then when they got it rolling in December, I really thought, hey, man, they could be the 2 seed. If they're the 2 seed, they're basically 2 home games away from playing in the NFC Championship game. Now, they didn't get to the 2 seed. They ended up being the 6 seed, and they still got to the NFC Championship game. But overall, trying to evaluate this season is pure speculation in terms of what you think would have happened versus what did happen. And the evaluation of players and coaches is nearly impossible on an individual basis, except for players like kickers and punters and kick coverage and punt coverage, because of the few number of plays and the few, the lesser impact of this injury-riddled season on that particular area of the team. But what I wanted to ask you guys is, what do you think is kind of the absolute craziest, over-the-top reaction to the situation? You've heard and listened to this show and other shows. You've had conversations with your friends about this season. What's the most insane, completely whack job reaction to this season? My number one is anybody that would suggest that they made a mistake, or that Jayden isn't who we thought he was, or that, others, New England in particular, got the star of the draft. That by the way, is a reasonable debate watching Drake May this year. I'm certainly not going to discount those of you that really like Drake May before the 2024 draft and are basking in that, afterglow in his second year, because he didn't do it in his first year. And normally they don't. What happened last year was not normal with our quarterback. That's very unusual, as we know. Greatest rookie season in the history of the league for a rookie quarterback, and the furthest a team has ever gone on the back of a rookie quarterback. But I think that, to me, the most insane take is that Jayden Daniels isn't who we thought he was. If you want to say Jayden Daniels is more of a concern because of the injuries this year, and that's a concern moving forward, that's not unreasonable. If you want to say, I do think that maybe the Patriots are going to end up with the best of that group, that's not unreasonable. It's not. I mean, it's very possible that they'll both be great. They'll both be great. I'm talking about kind of the extreme of, year 2, major slump, not the guy we thought he was. Why do I think that's the most insane take? Because he has barely played. He's played 5.5 of the 11 games. So he's played exactly half of the games. It'll be less than half after the next game, we're pretty sure. Denver seems like a stretch for him to be back for that game. It's not impossible for him to be back the following week against Minnesota. Week 1, he was fine in that game. Yeah, there were a couple of misses here and there, but he was fine in the game. And week 1's always a head fake. If you don't believe that, do you know who lost in week 1? the Patriots to the Raiders at home. Week 1 just as a head fake. When he came back after the injury against the Packers, he was lights out against the Chargers after, shaking off a little bit of rust after being out for a few weeks. Lights out. That was Jayden Daniels from last year against a pretty good defensive team on the road, and they blew out the Chargers 27-10. And then, there were some rough moments when he didn't have his guys out there. He just didn't have his team on the field. So that's one of the reasons. This is more just I want. It's not that I want to see it, because I believe we will see it. And even if we don't, it wouldn't deter me about what I think about next year. But one of the reasons I really want to see him back on the field, as long as it's with Terry, maybe with Noah Brown, with health at tight end, with the offensive line continuing to play at a decent level, decent to better than decent level, and be healthy. It's not everybody they had last year, but I think overall it's basically a better group because of the offensive line. And I want to see that, and I want it to sort of, seep into those that actually have questions about Jayden Daniels, that, okay, healthy, has some guys back, isn't throwing to Tay Martin or Robbie Chosen or Treylon Burks, even though Burks was kind of impressive in that game last week or 2 weeks ago, Chris Moore, et cetera. And look, the offense is starting to look like it did last year. Now, it's possible he comes back and he's rusty in the first game, and the defense is so bad that the game gets out of way. There's lots of possibilities, but I'd like to see what that looks like. But of kind of the overreactionary, recency bias, all of that stuff, the crazy reactions to this season that has gone badly. What's the most insane to you guys? 301-230-0980. Some of you believe all three of what John Z referenced. You think everybody should go. And that's fine. But of the sort of more calm, reasonable people out there, which of, the things you've heard about this team this year do you consider to be the most completely out of the world insane? To me, it's the Jayden talk. And I have to say, of the three biggies, I think that's the least amount. I think if you said biggest concern areas pie chart, I think Peters would be 1, Quinn would be 2, Jayden would be 3, among those that have at least one concern and are ready to kind of declare that they got it wrong on Peters, that they got it wrong on Quinn, or they got it wrong on Daniels. I think of the people that feel like at least one of those areas they've gotten it wrong, the most would be Peters, followed by Quinn, followed by Jayden. To me, though, the question is, which is the most just out of whack response to this season that you've heard? And maybe you've got one that isn't in one of those three areas. To me, it's anybody at this point, after watching what we watched last year, that would question that Jayden Daniels isn't as good as we saw last year. Like they got it wrong. The injury thing, justifiable. I want to emphasize the concern about injuries moving forward. That is not unreasonable. The belief that Drake May is going to be as good as or better and is going to be the true star of that class, that's not unreasonable to me. It isn't. I think there's a really good chance both end up being superstar quarterbacks. We know that only one of the two has actually played a superstar season in its entirety, although Drake May's heading for that. I mean, he is one of the front runners for the MVP. And last year, Jayden Daniels had an MVP-esque kind of a season. It was just a bit more crowded at the top with Lamar and Josh Allen, et cetera, and Saquon Barkley, right? There were just three other worldly performances last year, whereas this year the otherworldly performances are less. I mean, unless you want to say Jonathan Taylor at this point. But Drake May's good. So there we go. 301-230-0980. Max, I want to hear your response when we come back. What's the most insane take on this season you've heard so far? It could be on this show. It could be on another show. It could be within your friend group. It could be whatever, wherever you got it from. For me, it's anybody that has written me, called. My friend last week, I read the text. He wanted to trade Jayden. We talked about that. That's the most insane for me. My eyes did not deceive me. I know what I watched last year. I watched an elite level quarterback season. The only one we've had here since 1991, an elite level quarterback season. I wouldn't even say RG3's 2012 was an elite level quarterback season. It was an exciting season. It was productive, and he was awesome, but it wasn't as overall elite as Jayden's was last year. No, I'm not going to call any of Kirk's seasons here elite. His 2016 was absurd, and it was record-breaking in a lot of different ways, franchise-wise, but I wouldn't call anything, as much as I love him, I wouldn't call anything that he's ever done in his career elite level. High level, yes. Elite level, no.